uh, it's fascinating. I was just in prayer and I said, Lord, I was trying to understand why it's so difficult for God to change us. And one of the reasons that came to me in my heart was the fact that sometimes when you think you're all right, you don't have your spirit wide open so the Holy Spirit can make mid-course corrections. You know, when you just think you're okay, because I told my wife, I said, God is just unraveling some stuff in me. He's just peeling back some stuff and removing stuff, because the more he removes, the clearer I could see, you know, so it's very important. And when you think about the Apostle Paul, once he had his experience with God and became a believer, Paul went aside in the desert and got to know this Jesus. He didn't just automatically, like we see sometimes if you watch a movie about the Apostle Paul, he didn't immediately just turn around and just start preaching a great deal. He was able to share that testimony, what happened to him on the road to Damascus. But it's just that he went aside, and you see in Paul's writing, he talks about going aside to receive revelation from God. He got to know this Jesus. And most likely what God did was unravel stuff in him. And because this man brought forth so much revelation in the New Testament that it's just so free and liberating. So in dealing with the kingdom, I said another aspect of kingdom that we need to look at is the fact that in a kingdom, the land is the personal property of the king. That's what the land is the personal property of the king, and it is the ownership. And what he does is the ownership right, because he owns the land, the ownership right that he has, it designates him as Lord. And so we're going to look at Psalms 24 here in a minute. And I'm just trying to see which scripture I want to read it in. But in a kingdom, then, as you turn over to Psalms 24, I want you to see something there. In a kingdom, when referring to the physical land, the territory is called crown land. Crown, like we have one that went ahead, it's called crown land. It's owned by him. The earth, by creative right, is heaven's crown land. And when you're in Psalms 24, look at what it says right there. And I believe I want to, let me see if I want to read it. I think I'd rather read it from the New King James, and from the King James. In Psalm 24, it says in verse 1, the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. In other words, everything in it, the world and they that dwell therein. For he hath founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods. The earth is the Lord's. The earth is crown land. That's what the earth is. Because he owns it, God receives the title of Lord. Because he owns the land, this crown land. I mean, and when we go to Israel, and when I was in Israel, one thing you notice that in Israel, there is no such thing, as private property of ownership of land. The state owns 93% of the land. And I believe it's the ILA, see if I remember what those initials mean, Israel Land Authority, own the land. Now, what they do is if you want to purchase land, they will lease it to you for 49 years or for 98 years. Because Israel, Jerusalem, is crown land, and they abide by that same rule today. So think for a moment, what did God tell the children of Israel to do every Jubilee? You see how they give it? They'll lease it to you for 49 years or for 98. Because when God's people in Israel, when they own property, and let's say they sold their property to another Israelite, when they sold their property to another Israelite, God said in the year of Jubilee, that land goes back to the original owner. So you don't ever own the land. It's crown land. It belongs to God. So Israel will lease it to you for 49 years or for 98 years, but you will not have private ownership for life. It's crown land. I mean, God, that's the system. He set up that system in the Old Testament. And that's why I said, getting this framework from the Old Testament is so important for us to understand. And he says right here in Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord. He owns it. And because he owns it, and because he created it, he is the Lord, capital L, of the earth. So what he does is he put man here. He fitted us for earth for us to oversee this territory that he placed here. I thought that was just so fascinating about Israel, that they'll do those things, because every Jubilee, God said, whoever you purchase that land from, it goes back to the original owner. If you have a debt, you're free. The land in the year Jubilee. Celebratory, isn't that something? Every 50 years you have Jubilee. Debts canceled. Land reverts back to the original owner. That's why they celebrated that Jubilee. So he is the owner. This is crown land, and it's so important to understand that aspect. Look at Psalm 115. Since we're in Psalms, let's stay there. Let's look at Psalm 115. Psalm 115. Let me find it here. And when you're in Psalm 115, look at verse 16. It says, the heaven, now note this now, the heaven, even the heavens, heaven singular, even the heavens plural, are the Lord's. But the earth hath he given to the children of men. There are some scriptures that, to me, you have to see them in the King James, because in translating them or putting them in other translations, sometimes something is missed. I don't know if any other translation said it as distinctly and clear as this. God says, this is what David says here, the heaven, singular, even the heavens, plural, are the Lord's. He did not give us authority over that in Psalm 115, verse 16. He did not give us authority over that. He said, but the earth have he given to the children of men. So he gave us the earth. This is ours. This was supposed to be ours. This was supposed to be man's crown jewel, the earth, until Adam and Eve sinned. This is what God gave to us. He didn't give us the heavens. I know everybody talking about dying and going to heaven, but and so things had to change, but he gave us the earth. This is where we were supposed to occupy. And I remember we went to Hawaii. Last time we were there was on our honeymoon. And I tell you, I don't know if any place is just, it looked like, I mean, you talk about a postcard of beauty. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Now imagine this is what he gave to man, all this beauty. You travel across America in the Midwest, our beautiful mountains and our rivers and our streams. I mean, the Rocky Mountains, and he gave all that he gave to man. He said, I give all it to you. He didn't give us any ugly looking place. He gave us a resort on earth. I've given you all of this. And Adam and Eve messed that up. But the heavens, see, this is key. This is very important. The heavens, singular, even the heavens. So he emphasized that. Even the heavens. I don't know how it reads in some other translation, but it's even the heavens are the Lord's. But the earth, he's given to the children of men. Isn't that something? And when God gave the earth to man, now he did not relinquish ownership. See, that goes back to that. It goes right back to that key thought or that theme that I keep repeating. It's so important. I mean, get it in your spirit. Get it in your spirit. It's so important. And that is, God wanted to establish a manifestation of his heavenly kingdom on earth without coming to earth himself. That's what God wanted to do. He wanted to establish a manifestation of his heavenly kingdom on earth without coming to earth himself. God's idea wasn't for his people to sit around waiting to die, going to heven. But times get so bad, sit around thinking about going to heaven. getting so sick thinking about release me, let me go to heaven. That was not the original design. The design was you're here in your heaven. You're in your crown jewel. You're on the earth. I've given this to the children of men. Earth is yours. The heaven and heavens belong to God. And so we possess the earth as stewards. That's what we are, under the high king of heaven. See, so, but we possess it, but under the stewardship of God. Now, God gave us dominion over the earth. Remember now, not as owners, but as stewards. We are the stewards of the earth. Look at Leviticus for a second. I want you to see this one. Look at Leviticus chapter, what chapter is that in Leviticus? Chapter 25. Leviticus chapter 25. I want you to see this because this gets back to Israel in their ownership of land. In verse 23, it says, the land shall not be sold forever. That goes back to what happened to Israel and how come there was no private property. The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine. Do you see that? Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23. Do you see that? Why can't you sell the land? Because the land, God said, is mine. For you are strangers and sojourners with me. And in all that land of your possession, you shall grant a redemption for the land. And it goes on to explain some of those redemptions, and it lets them know. It tells them about the Jubilee. So if you want to read about the Jubilee, I believe there's some teaching on Jubilee in this, some instances here in Leviticus chapter 25 about redeeming the land in that 50th year, that celebration of Jubilee. But God said, the land shall not be sold forever. That's why Israel gives you a 49-year lease or a 98-year lease. You can't have the land forever because it belongs to God. You got to really work hard not to want to believe in God. When you see that little nation following these rules, where did they get these things from? They just decided that they like to be different, like everybody else sells private property. They won't sell private property. Where did they come from? Where did these things come from? No matter how liberal they may be today, they still abide by this. The ILA controls 93% of all the land. You can buy land over there if you choose to, but you will have it for a period of time. It will never be yours forever. Isn't that something? And where did that come from? It's what God told them. The land, he said, is mine. And they abide by that. Israel can live on the land. Israel can work the land. You can farm the land. You can make produce and you can prosper with the land. You can sell the goods that you produce on that land, no problem. And if your neighbor, another Israelite, needed financial assistance, they could even sell their land to another Israeli. But the law that we just read made a provision for the land to be returned every 50 years for that Jubilee. And that's something God believes in, redemption. So he shows you, see, all through the scriptures, he's showing you the plan of salvation, because after Adam and Eve, everything began to work about redemption. Even the land has to be redeemed because Adam and Eve were the caretakers of it. Man were the caretakers. He said, I've given you the earth. That's why the land is groaning, waiting to be redeemed. The manifestation of the sons of God. Even the land feel the effects of the sin. Haven't you ever been out working in your yard and you have to deal with those daggone thorns and thistles? Even the land was cursed and had to be redeemed, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God, right? So during the year of the Jubilee, like we said, any land that was sold by the previous owner, it was automatically given back to the original owner. Automatically. The land belongs to God. Now, here's another thought. In a kingdom, living on and using the land is a privilege and not a right. See, this is why I said, Lord, help and unravel this stuff to me, Father, because everything I know about private property is it's a right. You got the right to defend your private property here in the West. It's a right. Well, see, in a kingdom, it's not a right to use the land. It's a privilege. Because the Lord of the land has allowed you to be stewards of it, so it's a privilege. See, that's why I said, oh God, unravel this stuff, because everything inside me has been built with rights, laws, what's mine, territories, defined by, measured out, defined territories. They have all of the defined territories of our property right down in City Hall. It's there, this property line. Is mine. It's mine by right. You do not have the right to infringe upon it. That's everything about the West. But God said, the land I'm giving you, not a right, it's your privilege. It's a privilege for you to have this land, because the land belonged to the Lord, the King. And this, I had to stop there, because I said this is absolutely critical to understanding the kingdom and how it works. We have to be able to recognize that the whole earth is heaven's crown. This whole earth is heaven's crown. And that's why Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6, pray that thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, because this is heaven's crown is the earth. The same love David had for Jerusalem, he loved Jerusalem. David was the king that extended the walls of Jerusalem, but God had that same love for the earth. He said, for this entire earth, thy will, Jesus said, be done on earth. Thy kingdom come. Ooh, glory to God. That's what God's in his original plan before it got corrupted by everything else. And this is critical. This is critical. I had to stop right there. Just to meditate, just to think, and just to pause and reflect that without understanding this critical point, I would not understand how the kingdom worked, because I have to understand that I'm not living by rights, but by privilege, because the earth is his. And our Western mindset hurts us in trying to understand God's kingdom, because everything in the West is we own. If I own it, it's mine. I have rights. I could take you to court. You're infringing on my land. That's my land, and you put a fence on it. We have rights. God said, in the kingdom, the earth belongs to the Lord, and it's a privilege for you to live on it. It's a privilege for you to partake of the benefits of being on this earth. That is critical. And I had to stop, because I said, Lord, this is why we, I said, Father, in Christianity, how can we miss it? Because that one concept is foreign to us. Privilege over rights. We train our kids what your rights are. We can have the house. They each have their own, they have their bedroom. The girls have their bedroom. The boys have their bedroom. And inside that room, we teach them. That's your room. You're responsible for it. Keep it clean. We teach them. This is what we tell them. And see, so we learn rights right from the beginning. It just gets instilled in us. So we grow up that way. I get a home, that's mine. You don't have the right to infringe on it. So everything is about rights in the West. So we miss this, because this is a Middle Eastern type of ideology, and plus it was God's design, and that's why God was instilling it, that the earth is mine. I own it. I've given it to the children of men as stewards. You don't ever own it. As stewards. To maintain and to take care of it. But the earth is heaven's crown. This is heaven's crown, is the earth. And I said, Lord, I stood there. I had to take that in. I think I had to shut everything else off and just meditate on that for a period of time. I think I stopped for the day and just tried to deal with that, because that one point, I said, Lord, it's so critical. If I don't get this, because of how I'm built and how I'm wired, being in the West, I will not understand what it means to have lordship, or to have the king over this earth, and that this being heaven's, that this earth is heaven's crown. If I can't get this correctly, Lord, if I don't get this point indelibly in my heart, I said, I'll miss some of the greater truths that are coming down the pipe. Because listen, God is just getting things rolling. And there's some greater truths coming down the pipe. So let me go ahead. And then we talked about the original idea. Remember that the original idea was colonization. God wanted to fill this earth, right? He filled this earth with Adam and Eve. Adam filled this earth, colonized this earth, so that this earth resembles heaven. Fill this earth, Adam. And it's so hard. And I said, it's so hard to even imagine that God said, fill this earth, Adam, so that this earth resembles heaven. Multiply, replenish the earth. This is make it look just like heaven. So, I think that was Sweetie. Time out already. Okay, another point. And I'm going to keep saying this to all of us, get this indelibly. I mean, stamped, tattooed into our heart and into our spirit, that God wanted. What did God want? He wanted to establish a manifestation of his heavenly kingdom on earth. He wanted to establish a manifestation. God wanted the earth to be a manifestation of his heavenly kingdom without him coming to earth himself. Turn over to Isaiah 45. Let's look at Isaiah 45. Try to speed up a little bit. Isaiah 45. I want you to see this in Isaiah 45, and you can go through this stuff during the week, but look at Isaiah 45 and look at verse 18. Isaiah 45, verse 18. For thus said the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He had established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is none else. He made the earth to be inhabited. He did not make this earth to be sitting here waiting with some amoebas to come out of some water and start walking. And first you get to ape, and then all that evolutionary foolishness, which it takes great faith to believe in evolution. Now I have been around some people who I believe may have been some of those apes, but some of their behavior. But the thing is, God made us, he didn't make us that way. But here he says, for thus said the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. Why did he make the earth? He established it. He set the perimeters. He created it not in vain, not just to be hanging there like like a mural in a art museum. He formed it to be inhabited. That's why God made the earth. That's why God put Adam and Eve here, to inhabit it. The concept of colonization is the most important component of a kingdom that we must understand. We have, and I mean, I believe we will have some difficulty fully grasping the message of Christ until we can understand colonization and understand this whole kingdom aspect. We'll miss the message of Christ, or what we'll do is we'll just get a sort of an abridged version of the message. We won't get the full message, but we'll get an abridged version. And I believe for a lot of Christians, especially in the West, we have been functioning and living our lives off an abridged version of the message, because we did not understand the concept of what God initially wanted when he put man on this earth. Some people just, if you listen to them, you just think God had nothing to do, but he said, it was not in vain. I formed it to be inhabited, and I formed it inhabited by Adam and Eve, and I wanted them to multiply. Okay, so This misunderstanding or ignorance about the kingdom concept has produced all of these human religions and sects that we have today. It produced them all. It's produced them all. That's why we have religion, because we didn't understand kingdom. God was not trying to establish a religion. What did it say? God wanted to establish a manifestation of heaven on earth. That's why he came. He was not trying to establish a religion or a sect of religion. He was attempting to establish a manifestation of his heavenly kingdom on earth without him coming here himself. God's primary purpose, God's primary motives and plans, God's primary design was to colonize earth with heaven. God wanted to colonize earth with heaven. That's one reason why, and you have to break off and periodically look at the enemy. That's why Satan was so determined in heaven to persuade these angels to come down here with him, because, and he rebelled against God because he, with all of the glory that he had in heaven, he just rebelled against God because he did not want, he believed he can do a better job than God. And in his persuasion, he persuaded a third of the angels to follow him when they were kicked out. But the thing is this, because God's original plan, God's original purpose, God's original design was for this earth to look like be colonized with heaven, be filled with heaven. That's why Satan came down here initially to Adam and Eve. And that's why to this day, he wants to destroy anything that has to do with this earth, because this earth was given to us, was given to man. Satan, here's another way how Satan is working in today's world, what he's doing. He has individuals who consider themselves to be environmentalists. They make trees and things of that nature their God. Instead of recognizing that, yes, we have a responsibility to the earth. Why? When you understand the real reason why, because God put this earth here for us to colonize. And then you have others who would say, we'll run out of resources. You will never run out of resources on this earth. It just can't happen, because the God that formed this earth is the God of unlimited resources, unlimited power, unlimited authority. So the earth will never be without resources. So, but what Satan does, he spins in the mind of man the idea that the earth is one day going to run out of resources. Why? Because anything he can do to corrupt the original plan, the original purpose of God, that's what he spins in the mind of man. He told Eve, said, listen, God knows. Listen, you're not going to die. I mean, just have a few bites of the fruit. Just have one. Taste how good. He's trying to hold something back from you. He's trying to hide something from you. He's trying to hide something from you. And that's what he comes and he lies. And the same thing when you look at what's happening right now, this earth will never be without resources. Now, for some resources, you may have to do just like we found oil. You got to explore and you have to find the resources, but it's here. It's here. It's here. Diamonds and gems are all in the earth. God put all that stuff here for us, but you got to dig for them. They're not on the surface. You don't find diamonds lying in the street. They're on the, when you dig for them, you'll find them. All natural resources they call it natural resources. What that is that was God's given us the supply we would need. He put everything in the earth. Everything's in this earth. Nothing will ever run out. But he puts in the minds of scientists, oh, we can one day be without resources. He puts in the minds of some of these farmers, he says, oh, one day we may not have land to farm to produce. So we got to get into aquatic farming. You know, that's type of farming they do now, this aquatic farming where they farming on lakes and streams, or they building these large like warehouses, and they have Each floor, they'll have trays of different things growing, because we're running out of resources. We're not running out of resources. That is a lie that Satan spins in the minds of man, and man speaks that out, and people buy it. But God did not put any of us here with resources that will ever run out. And just to show you this, we got to deviate just for a moment, because I have to bring this to a close for the day. I didn't mean to deviate from this, but this is where I'm being led. For instance, when it comes to resources, there were poor people and will always be poor people. The Bible tells us this. Jesus said, the poor you will always have. They'll always be there. Why? For a number of reasons. They'll just always be there. Yeah, man, I know some they don't want to work. And there's other reasons. But what did he say? He said, give, and it shall be given unto you. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And running over. That's what he said, and running over. There's no lack of any resources. There's no lack of any resource. I don't care what it is. There's no lack. There is no lack of any resource. And then he said, listen, he said, he told the Jews, said, listen, bring all the tithes into the storehouse. And when they said tithe, it wasn't just money. They brought their first fruits. They brought their grain. They brought their oils. You talking about them oils. They brought the different oils. They brought all that to the priest. And because they had a storehouse, he said, bring it into the storehouse. And he said, watch how I bless you. Well, let me just look at it for a second. And then I'm going to close after that, babe. Sweetie sent me 2 notes. Look at Malachi for a second. I just want to show you something, because the devil's a lie. And obviously God wanted to say something to somebody trying to get this. And he said to Malachi chapter 3, verse 10. He says, he tells the people that I am the Lord, I change not. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 6, he said, for I am the Lord, I change not. Woo-hoo-hoo. Isn't that something? Malachi chapter 3, verse 6, for I am the Lord, I change not. Then he tells them, listen. He said, bring, in verse 10, all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me. This is the only time you'll find in the scripture where God challenges mankind. He challenges us. He says, prove me. He's saying, put me to the test. That's what it means. Put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour, dribble, sprinkle, he said, pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And then he said, and I will rebuke the devourer for your sake, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast forth fruit before the time in the field, said the Lord of hosts. See, there's no limit to his resources, and there's nothing on this earth that's limited. It's a lie that's been spun by Satan, talked about by people, talked about by politicians. Faith come by hearing. People have heard it so much that they believe it, that there's shortages, that there's lack. And they buy it. And what you do is you put a limitation on God. God is without limit. If God does something, it's without limits. And when he made this earth, he put everything in. Let me tell you something. We know about fossil fuel, right? We know about oil. We know about coal. We know about things. Let me tell you something else. There's more. There's more on this earth. Those aren't the only thing. Those are what we found. You hear me? Those are the things we found. There's more. They found natural gas. That's a recent thing. See, that was always there too when they were just dealing with oil. There's more. But that's just what we found. He is without limits. The reason this earth is spinning, let me tell you something. This earth is spinning. It's a manufacturing, it's a manufacturing earth. That's all this is. The earth, interior of this earth is producing nothing but good. It's a seed. This earth is a seed. And we need to get that in our spirit. I'm telling you, that's why it's so hard with this kingdom stuff, because the Western lifestyle and our lifestyle, we have a lifestyle of limits. God's limitless. We have to get that in our spirit. He's limitless. The kingdom is without limits. He said the heavens, heaven and heavens belong to God. And I've given you the earth. And this earth is filled with all types of goodies and trinkets. All we know is what we see. That's nothing. This earth is stockpiled full of good. I'm telling you right now, it's stockpiled full of good. There is no limits. There is no limits because God gave us this earth. There are no limits. And when people tell me, I just ignore them. There are no limits. He's a limitless God. There are no limits. There's not even a limit when and Jesus showed him. Because we're going to be moving into New Testament next week. Jesus showed him there were no limits. He's, I'm going to show you that there's no limit with sickness. I'm going to show you there's no limit with death. I'm going to show you there's no limit with sin. Everything he touched was limitless. He said, I'm going to show you. The kingdom has authority over death. The kingdom is not subject to death. The kingdom is not subject to poverty. The kingdom is not subject to disease. I'm going to show you these things. That's why he went around healing. That's why his message was, the kingdom has come to you. The kingdom is near. He said, I'm here. The kingdom, the manifestation of that kingdom, he said, is here. It's near you. He said, it's near. There's no limits. I got to stop. Sweetie sent notices twice. I got to stop. I didn't look at him. I know it's you. So we'll pick this up next week. Amen. God bless you.